Yeah. Well, hello there, good people. Hi, it's Jason with Green Country Agroforestry here. It's Wednesday night, 8:30 p.m. Central Standard Time, and we're back on track with regular Wednesday night live streams the way we intended to have them. As you know, I've been dealing with an injury over the course of this week, and it's just thrown my entire schedule off. So we are now back on track with an actual topic. It does have something to do with the size of a certain strawberry that you would see in the thumbnail. But tonight, our topic is, of course, the advantages to perennial gardening, which was brought home to me quite viscerally over the course of this week. Because had I had an ordinary garden, I really was not doing much in the way of chores to tend it. I did stay on top of our minimum chores, so I went out. I took care of the ducks. I let them out. I changed their water. I gave them food. I put food out for the outdoor kitties. That's about it. It rained, so I didn't have to water anything, fortunately. So this entire week I've been on limited duty. And yet, despite the fact that I was on limited duty for this entire week, earlier today, whenever I made my rounds doing those minimal chores, I happened to pick this thing, which is, of course, a 45-gram strawberry. See that guy right there? Of course, grown without any fertilizers other than a bucket full of used duck water spilled about the time that they were in flower. So that's all the fertilizer these have had is a little bit of duck manure during their flowering stage, and a few weeks later, I get strawberries this size. Now the question is, how good are they? Well, I'll try eating it here in a minute. You see the size of my mouth and you see the size of the strawberry. Okay, it's not something that you take on lightly. So this is the kind of berries our Albion ever-bearing strawberries are producing this year, and it's not just the strawberry plants that are getting big. I've got some dock greens over here. I chopped some and was giving them to the ducks. Of course, you can't see them because of the screen settings. Give me a moment here. We'll turn this off. All right. So, oh, that's hideous. Hang on. Let's just say no background for a moment. There we go. All right. So these are dock greens, and I just went ahead and tied them off because I wanted to show you relative size. This is me from head down, and well, you can see how big these greens are. They're currently in that stage where the seeds are still green and tender, and at this particular stage, the animals do like to graze on these. So these are growing all over the property, and I've been trimming them back and taking them to where the animals are. Although I can move the animals around, some of these plants grow in places where I don't want the animals grazing. So I'm just cutting these and feeding them as a supplement to the feed. You see exactly how huge those those flowers are getting there. They're monstrous. And the way this worked out was I went out and was harvesting the dock greens during the winter for pot herbs, and the plants that I harvested from, it wasn't all of them. There's one in particular I found one. Okay, this was coming along fairly well, so I harvested the greens from that. I cooked those up, had one decent meal out of it, and it was okay. And the rest of them I left. I didn't do anything with them because it hasn't been necessary for us to eat nothing but dock greens during the winter. We haven't been falling on hard times, but we have these plants growing at all times that we can use at all times. And one of the things that dock does in response to having its leaves harvested for salad or for pot herbs, it's really, I think, better for pot herbs because of the oxalic acid. Cooking gets rid of it, but it makes it a good hardy winter green. Once you've harvested those leaves, they come back in greater profusion and the plant gets big. So this particular spray of seeds, which are perfect fodder for the ducks a little bit later on, well, that's the result of me having gone and done a little bit of disturbing on that particular dock plant. It decided, well, my response is I'm going to produce more leaves. I'm going to produce bigger leaves. I'm going to make a lot of seeds instead of just a few seeds. And that was the response that we had from them. All right. So I've been rambling for about 5 minutes. This is enough time for people to actually get in, get through the commercials and all that good stuff. We're going to start out with the advantages to perennial gardening in no particular order. I listed 5 different things that make perennial gardening an advantage. The first one, of course, is generational. Generational. Perennial gardens can last many generations, and you can pass on the work that you do now to your children and your grandchildren and your great grandchildren, provided that land stays within family. If it doesn't stay within family, but it stays within a family of people that understand the value of what you've done with the property in the way of establishing a perennial garden, then once again that work can be built upon and be passed on to future generations. This means that as time goes on, the process of producing food and fuel and medicine, shelter, things of this nature that are vital for human survival become easier and easier for each successive generation, provided that they continue to take these practices and put them into use. The kids are outside. I think they're going to go for a drive around the block or something like that. Number 4, safe spacing, or space saving. Oh, hang on. I'm getting a message that the back door is not in fact open. Let me take a look here. All right, Kimber, sneak behind the green screen. Otherwise, I'm going to have to get up and walk and unlock the back door for you. Sorry about that. So we're going to have some disturbances in the background of the studio for a moment here whenever the kids come inside. See, this is how modern communications works. They know I'm doing a show, so they get into the chat and say, "Hey, the back door is not open." All right, yeah, there should be enough room for you to squeeze in past the green screen, guys. All right, number 4, saves on space. They're behind me right now.
Sorry, it's just me.
All right, let me see here. Oh, let's get this thing. Hey, look. You can see reality on the other side of the curtain. Oh. All right, saves on space. It seems odd, doesn't it, that at this particular point in human history, our advances in agriculture, which are the peak of this particular branch of the sciences, of agricultural sciences, we've gotten to this point where we have amazing automation. We have amazing ability to produce artificial fertilizers, inputs, great advances in hydrology, where we can bring water and water crops and fertilize crops and really get the most yield possible out of a monocrop of anything. We have reached the top of what is possible. We've even taken some crops and we've bred them, and in some cases gone beyond breeding them to make them yield even more. But that's still not as much as a forest garden planted in successive layers can produce, simply because it's still a monoculture. It's still one layer absorbing the energy of the sun to the extent that one layer can, and then the rest of that energy winds up becoming wasted. So, in growing a forest garden, a perennial garden, we attempt to capture more of the energy that is coming in at all times and really concentrate on developing that energy in different seasons and in different space, which is all kinds of fun. Whereas your monocrop, it's that one layer. Whenever it's done, it's done. Ken Jennings in the house. Howdy, howdy. Yes, this is the strawberry. It is real by comparison. You see how big my mouth is? I don't think I could quite get it in that way. I think we're going to have to just take this one and eat it in bites. It's about 1/10 of a pound all by itself. All right. So, saving on space, we can do our perennial gardens, which over time become richer and richer and richer, and of course produce more out of that same spice. That's right, the same space, which is an advantage over uh, annual monocrop agriculture. All right, on to number 3. It is regenerative. So one of the things that we've discovered with our modern agriculture is it does have a tendency to cause depletion of soil organic matter. The artificial fertilizers that we put on, which are wonderful advancements in technology to be sure, but unfortunately they do have a tendency to wash through the soil, get into our waterways, create algae blooms in the oceans, which whenever they die off, cannibalize all the oxygen in the immediate area, cause mass suffocation events, kill tons and tons of fish. Not all that great. So there's some drawbacks to it. Oh, thanks. I got some more water here. Woohoo! All right, I think I'm all set on drinks. Just make sure the young kitty cat does not decide to go trampling over the green screen, because that would be, yeah. Oh, this is called Ezra. Ezra is what, 17 pounds?
Between 15 and 20.
Oh yeah, he's huge.
And before anybody asks, no, he's not a Maine Coon.
He's just big. He's a huge kitty. Anyway, he's also skittish and likes to run around and topple things over and get into stuff. So, fair warning: if he decides to go on a rampage, then you'll see what's actually behind the green screen. All right. So while annual agriculture has a tendency to destroy soil organic matter over time, while annual agriculture has these other problems, perennials do not have the same problems because they keep their same root structure in the ground over time. That means that the microbial associations and the fungal associations that are established with the root systems of these perennial plants are maintained over time. These communities aren't destroyed by constantly ripping the soil out, pulling out the roots of whatever was there, because this is an annual crop. It's dead now. It's time for it to get turned into something else. As a result, the soil organic matter builds up and up and up instead of being depleted over time. So even if we're relying upon a certain amount of annuals for regular crops, and I think there's perfectly reasonable to have a certain amount of annuals involved in our regular crops. For example, we grow corn. We don't grow a lot of corn. Corn isn't the only thing we're growing, and we're surrounding the area that we're growing with corn with all kinds of perennials that are being grown, so that the area that we are submitting to regular disturbance is contained within an area that should be able to mitigate the effects of the routine disturbance. And once again, they're only doing that because there's an area that we need to keep clear of other things, because this is also a waste disposal area, a septic tank drain field, which I would not request or would not suggest using to grow something like potatoes or strawberries, for that matter. That's kind of curious. Yeah. All right. So number 3 was regenerative. Your perennial gardening is regenerative as opposed to destructive of the soil overall. And you can mix the two together. Putting hedgerows, for example, in between the space where one wants to plant wheat. You have enough room to run your combine back, circle around, and come back for a second pass. So you have 2 passes of your combine. That's perfect. You have 2 passes of your combine, hedgerow on either side, and you will never lose soil to wind or water erosion, because the hedgerows will keep your soil intact. The hedgerows also provide plenty of biomass to replenish soil organic matter. So as you go forward, you're going to be continuously replenishing soil organic matter. You can still grow grain inside of an agroforestry system, which is kind of cool. Have nests upon nests of hedgerows with swales, perhaps, to have water in the ground at all times. You've got a pretty good resilient system. All right, moving on. Number 2 is efficiency, of course. All right, here we go. see if I can decipher my chicken scratch, because I have my notepad here that I wrote down everything in a rush this afternoon. It's like, okay, I need to have an actual topic for the show today. What are we going to talk about? Oh yeah, I know. So I think I start out by saying most perennial crops, and then I realized this is probably not a correct blanket statement. So without qualifying that one, I would like to say many perennial crops make do with the normal water cycles that we ordinarily have going on in our environments around us. And they don't require a lot of extra supplemental irrigation. I would make like an example of the canna lily that we really love to grow for the nutrient dense root that it has, or the calorie dense root that it has. If those don't get sufficient water, they don't make very large roots at all. They don't survive well. So there's some caveats. Some of these perennials are more susceptible to drought than others, and it depends upon what you got and where you've got. But by and large, most of your perennial vegetables, trees, shrubs, etc., once they're established, once they've managed to make contact with the normal water table that you have, are able to handle growing with the normal weather cycles, and you don't have to devote extra effort to making sure that they keep on going. That is good, because you need to use that water that you're getting for other things, especially if you have to acquire it by manually pumping it, like we would have to if we had some major emergency. And I noticed that David the Good kind of snuck in and said hello. Let's see. He's saying, down in the tropics, we had both vetiver grass and the one I'm not going to attempt to pronounce. One was a thick erosion stopping bunch grass, and the other was a nitrogen fixture we could chop and drop and use to feed animals and soil. All right. Yeah, I'd rather you kind of want them both. In all actuality, there are times that you're going to be working on developing an area, and you need something to fill that space, and that's exactly what an annual is great for. I have an area that I don't know exactly how it's going to turn out. We've just kind of exposed it. It was under a tree before. Is it still clay under there? Oh yeah, it is. Okay, there's a little bit of humus on the top. So what we're doing now is going in and breaking up that area, and I'm planting in sunflower and safflower and daikon radish and sugar beet and everything else, because really it is clay, and it hasn't really had anything done to it except have some organic matter put down on top, and that's really it. So the annuals are helping out in those respects. As we develop the soil and break it up and turn it into something more usable, then we can move other things in. And then, of course, annuals are great for doing rapid succession planting. Yeah. All right. So David's here. David, look. David, look. Do you see the strawberry, David? This is not fertilizer. This is duck water. I put a bucket of used duck water. Here's what we did. And I've been doing this while I've been convalescing too. I have a cat bite on the backside of my leg, 4 fangs, demonic kitty, into the back of my leg at the beginning of the week. So I've only been able to just put around and do basic chores this week. So I haven't had a lot of video content coming out, unfortunately. But I'll tell you about some of the stuff that we've been doing. I still managed to get out there to the ducks. I still fed the ducks. I still changed out their water. Of course, whenever I change out their water, I've got a bucket full of used duck water. And what I typically will do is, it's not great soil, David, not great at all. But what I'll typically do is, after I've had the water in one of these Rubbermaid tubs, it's about 15 gallons of the hold, I'll put about 10 gallons in there. And the first day, I'll leave that tub, go to another tub, and fill it up for them, so they have fresh water in a second tub. First one's there, and it's just going to kind of mellow a bit. Because they like to go to the bathroom in the water, they'll go to the bathroom in the only water they have, or they'll go to the bathroom more in the slightly dirtier water and drink the good water first, and then they'll foul that up more. But as it turns out, the second day that the ducks have had access to that water, it goes from 10 gallons down to about 5. The area around it, of course, has been fertilized, but I now have 5 gallons of liquid fertilizer. I put it into a bucket and I can carry it wherever I want to fertilize. So About the time the strawberries, these are an Albion everbearing strawberry with partial shade. So about the time these guys were in flower, I took a 5-gallon bucket of 1-day-old duck water out to where these strawberries were and poured it out and watered it in and left it. That was about the only thing that we did to these guys. And this is the result. This is the biggest one so far. So far, this is the biggest one. The other ones are also fairly large, but this is certainly biggest. This is about 1/10 of a pound. And well, the question, I guess, is how does it taste? Well, it's sweet. And it's juicy. There's a low in vitamin C. It's a little tart. Mm. Mm. And it was free because those strawberries just keep on producing more strawberry plants every year. And the ducks, in the course of running around and weeding and killing the bugs for me, they keep on. No, it does not taste like duck water. They keep on making that wonderful liquid fertilizer for me. They eat the slugs and the snails. They eat the little wood lice. Now that I've added, I'm going to have to show you guys some video. I've started to add little pocket ponds, and these are well, I've got two different ones. One's a 50-gallon that's made with a regular pond liner. Okay, well, miniature pond liner, and the other one is made with a 2 foot by 2 foot by 4 foot. So it's 4 foot wide, 2 foot, or 4 foot long, 2 foot wide, 2 foot deep stock tank. And we've got 2 of those in so far. I'll probably add a few more before it's all over and done with. And of course, I need to add a fairly large pond specifically for the ducks because I'd like for them to be able to have at least some time before their water becomes completely foul that they can actually splash around and enjoy it. I would like to give them that at least because they produce so many eggs. Oh, guys, so many eggs. These khaki camels. 300 eggs per duck per year. They aren't kidding. They crank them out, sometimes 2 a day per duck. If anybody happens to be nearby in Northeast Oklahoma, and thank you, David, by the way. Oh, yeah, guys, keep ducks. Absolutely keep ducks. Water your ducks every couple of days. Take that duck water to wherever you want fertilizer. You will have all the free fertilizer you're ever going to need. And you get eggs. And you get free weeding services from the ducks. And you get insect control from the ducks, too. What I was getting ready to say, and thank you very much, David. I greatly appreciate it. What I was getting ready to say is because of the pocket ponds that we're putting in, and I'll get into those here in a couple of days when I take the camera around and I can actually do a little bit more walking. These allow a breeding space for things like frogs and toads. If anybody watches, I'm going to look silly here because I can't remember the channel name off the top of my head. Carl's Off Grid is what it is. Carl's Off Grid. He occasionally will show up in chat. Anyway, Carl's Off Grid. If you ever watch him, he's up in Wisconsin quite a few times whenever he's closing out his Stabby McStab is saying about my OK property this week. Whereabouts in the Northeast? We're just west of Tulsa. If you're actually interested in taking a duck or 2 off my hands or something like that, I do still have like maybe 2 or 3 more ducks that I could stand to get rid of if somebody happens to be in the area. Having 8 ducks is still more eggs than I can eat. So anyway, I'd be happy to share some of the bounty. Either take some eggs off my hands or take some ducks off my hands. Either way is fine. I am experiencing the problem of overabundance, which, as it turns out, is a problem. It's kind of what happens whenever I started trimming that dock and getting over. How far from Grove? I don't know. Probably about 45 minutes, maybe. You have to bring something to transport it, man. On the about section on the channel, you'll find my email address. Just send me an email. We'll work something out. Or you can go on the website. There's a phone number you can actually call me. Don't call me right now. We're live on the air. uh, anyway, ducks are great, guys. They really are great. I wound up giving 4 of them away to the guy that was taking care of the old Bradford pear trees next to the church next door. The I don't know how much the pastor over there gave him, but he's kind of a kind of a skinflint. The guy had said, "Oh, just pay me whatever you think it's worth," and he cleaned up the trees for him, got him out of there in record time. Of course, I took the wood. I said, "Yeah, I don't know what you're going to get paid for that for this, but I want to make sure that you're well compensated. Here you go." And I gave him some ducks. But of course, what am I going to do but feed them and try to figure out what in the world I'm going to do with all these eggs? All right. We were at efficiency on my list of 5 different things, which is the reason why we might want to use perennial gardening, or at least consider mixing perennials in with your gardening plan. Now, I'm not saying you have to go and grow everything perennial, but just having perennials as part of your overall gardening plan works out incredibly well, not only from the standpoint of making particularly your borders and your edges of your garden more regenerative, soil building, being more resilient, requiring less inputs, requiring less water, saving on space. You're producing crops in an area that maybe you wouldn't be cultivating and growing something else in. Something that you can pass on, not only to your own children, but if you're selling your property, it goes along with the property, and whoever looks at it goes, "Oh my goodness, you have a bamboo grove here," or "Look at all of those asparagus and those strawberries. That's how many meals do I get every year just by having this house? It's going to keep on feeding me." People that understand the value of this realize that you've got food that goes along with the house. Potentially, you can have enough in perennials to feed a person or 2 all around a house, and have that as a regular establishment that goes along with the property. Whenever you sell it, people will see the value of that, and certainly the people who do see the value of it will want the property. Right. But what am I really going to go over there? Am I going to cultivate this area next to the fence year after year after year? No, I don't want to do that. Let's put some asparagus in it. Let's put some strawberries in it. Is this a shady spot? Strawberries grow great in this shady spot. Where we get out towards the edges, where it gets a little bit more light, maybe we put in the asparagus in there. Throw in things like daylilies, canna lilies. Are you going to eat them every year? Well, maybe not. But if you fall into hard times, will you remember that Jason said, "Oh yeah, those are things that you can dig up. You can eat the tubers, you can eat the flowers. All of that stuff is edible." Absolutely. I mean, this is just little bits and pieces of resilience, but also it's things that add more beauty to your property. It provides a place for the beneficial insects and the other wildlife to come in and get involved. The pocket pools, as I was saying, have made a breeding place for the frogs and toads. And I was saying, Carl's off the grid, close towards the end of his videos. You hear that noise, and I know exactly what animal that is, because I was out there just a couple of nights ago observing these common North American toads doing their mating in the pocket ponds that we established for them. There's about 7 or 8 of them back there in this 2 foot by 2 foot by 4 foot stock tank pond that we put back there. So we were having just tons and tons of these little amphibians running around gobbling up insects. And as a result, that strawberry that I presented has not been eaten up as much by some of the critters that might have been munching on it without these measures. So adding in the surface water and drawing in extra predatory animals has helped to balance the insect, pest, and predator population point to the point where I'm getting strawberries that I don't pick them up, and every other one has been half eaten by the woodlouse. As a matter of fact, I took the trouble to capture a couple of woodlice that I saw crawling around. Usually they're the regular solid gray-backed ones, but these ones had little spots on their back, like little tiger stripes or zebra stripes, in a light green color. And I thought, wow, that's pretty cool. I'm going to grab those and I put them aside with a little bit of moss and sealed it up, punched some holes in the top, just keeping it moist. And there are now little tiny babies in here. I'm going to find out if they have that same trait. Because actually, I've seen these sold at pet stores. Isopods with colorful markings on them are sold at an increased profit at pet stores. So I thought I might dabble a little bit with capturing some and keeping them in a terrarium. Seeing as we seem to have fewer and fewer of them in the wild now, in between the ducks and the frogs and the toads and the wild birds that like to come in and pick through everything, some of these insects are in shorter supply. Anyway. There you go. Leave it to David to have the metrics on this because I'm pretty sure you've done it. Have annuals feeding at 30 to 100 days. Yeah, it's not bad. And of course, the big advantage to annuals is you can always clear more space and plant more stuff. You essentially you're sacrificing space for productivity. So in your perennial garden, you can have more vertical growing and have more productivity in a smaller amount of space. But if you have the space, you can go to annuals and get a lot of productivity out of annuals. That's one of the big advantages. And of course, you get that return in the same year. So I'm definitely not going to poo-poo annuals for what they're good for. The big problem that we've had is we kind of as a species forgotten that we did have a more productive system that we started out with, and we just steadily gotten further and further away from it. And as a result, we've had all kinds of problems from health problems to societal problems. It all stem from getting away from the garden in all actuality. All right. Dairy cows, zebra. Okay, yeah. So these guys have got little they've got little patches on their back that are like light yellow to greenish color. So they're pretty cool looking. And I put that I guess I could pull the top off. Oh, you wouldn't be able to see it because of the green screen. Boy, I can turn the green screen off. I don't know if you can see the spot here because I've got the nymphs that have just come out. I'll see if I can get this thing close enough to the camera so you guys can see. So I have this little patch of moss in there, and right up here at the top, you might see the little patch of white there next to the dead one. That was the parent, and there are the eggs and the little nymphs that are in the process of hatching out and starting to go out and explore and find things to munch on. So there we have. Hopefully they've got the genetics of at least one of the parents, and we'll see more of that colorful pattern on an isopod there. Yeah, it might just be just a unique one that popped up where we're at, and so who knows? I've seen different patterns and different things like that in the stores. I went, okay, this one is not the usual plain one. Interesting little creatures, these woodlice. They're a land-dwelling crustacean, so they're related to shrimp, shrimp that live in the woods. But I don't think they taste like shrimp. Okay, so the babies are called fries, is what Stabby McStabwood is saying. Fries, interesting. Powdery blue ones would be kind of cool looking. And of course, sometimes in the jungles they get huge, and sometimes people in jungles do eat them. I wonder if the particularly large ones that wind up on the menu in the tropical rainforest diet, I wonder if those taste like shrimp. And yeah, I mean you have like lobsters. Those crustaceans in the ocean wind up on the menu all the time. So why not a woodlouse, right? But right now they're running around and they're munching on the decaying bits and pieces of the moss, and the moss was just growing by converting carbon dioxide from the air along with water vapor and sunlight into its particular cellulose and cell structure. Whenever it decomposes, the isopods eating that, transferring that into chitin. So all kinds of chemical processes are all going on in a miniature little enclosed ecosystem. I could put this into a jar and make it look interesting, I guess. All right, so you got to tell me: is the dairy cow isopod an aquatic one, or one of these a terrestrial isopod? I'm assuming it's probably a terrestrial isopod, but I don't recall ever seeing one. The things we wind up talking about, I swear. All right, so finally, we're going to get to the number one advantage to perennial gardening. If you haven't done it yet, if you could kindly please help the algorithm along, hit that like button down there, because occasionally we do actually talk about fun and interesting stuff, and I'd love for you to hear about it when it happens. And the best chance of that happening is if you like the videos, so you can get those pushed to the front of your push notifications. That way you can just ignore them whenever it's a topic you're not interested in. But if it is something you're interested in, you might be able to sit down and have fun watching. All right. Suzanne, I don't know what to make of this. Pan-fried mopane worms in Zimbabwe are chewy like squid and taste like shrimp. Oh my! I've eaten some fungi that kind of taste like seafood. For example, your inokatake mushrooms taste a little bit like general seafood. I mean, some people say it tastes more like crab. I think it tastes more like just like seafood medley. Which, if you're adding it to a stir fry instead of adding actual seafood, if nobody knew that was a mushroom, you go, here, how do you like the seafood medley stir fry? They can eat it and go, oh yeah, that tastes pretty good. Is that shrimp? Is that crab? Is that lobster you put in there? No, it's just a mushroom. What? Because you can't quite put your finger on what flavor that is. It tastes kind of like seafood. There you go. Worms, by golly. Ultimately, I still prefer feeding the worms to the ducks and feeding the isopods to the ducks and eating the eggs, because I feel that's a better way to convert protein for me anyway. For me, I don't know that I have the ability to produce a lot of chitase enzymes in my digestive system. So eating a lot of things with lots of chitin in their shells may not work out well for me. Apparently, it doesn't really work out well for a whole lot of other things. I've seen the scat left behind by a lot of nocturnal creatures that will eat isopods, including possums. And it turns out the shells didn't get digested by them either. They just sort of get passed on. So you see the cluster of shells, but they eat them like nobody's business. So if you have possums wandering around your property, you'll keep your eyes open for the possum scat. You'll see the isopod shells in it. I think raccoons do that too, but I'm not sure. All right, so the number one reason that you would like to have perennial gardening, or at least mixed perennial and annual gardening, is flexibility. As I discovered this week, I could take time for an injury where I could not get out and tend a regular garden. I wouldn't have been able to do it with the injury. As limited as my mobility was, I was able to get up and do some basic chores, but I wasn't going to be able to stand and move around for extended periods of time and tend a garden the way I might, or might even have to if it was an annual garden, although we do have some annuals in our garden. Fortunately, those were able to make do without any intervention during this particular week. Even so, the basic chores that I was doing allowed me to harvest, as you saw before, this really, really tremendous strawberry, and there are more like it on the way. So imagine you have to take time out for an injury where you're laid up and you can't tend your garden, or you've got to go somewhere or spend time at work and you don't have time to spend on your garden. Maybe you need to be taking care of your children, or you're having children and can't spend time in the garden. All of these things require an amount of time and attention that you cannot be spending in your garden whenever you're taking care of these things. So having that flexibility, saying, okay, look, I've got a lot of things that I've planted ahead of time that may not be highly productive for several years as we go along. By every year, I'm going to add a couple more perennials into my system, particularly out around here in the borders and the edges, the marginal spaces that otherwise I probably wasn't going to go out and do anything with anyway. Once I have these established, they just sit here quietly growing and producing and spreading and making more stuff for me. So whenever this day comes that maybe I do need to spend time doing this over here, or I have to go take care of my kid's sister. There's a fly that landed on my neck. I have to go take care of my kid's sister that had the accident, and her kids need somebody to mind them and get them to school or whatever it is. I can't necessarily be tending my garden full time for a period. Well, I've got these perennials, and that's the resiliency and the flexibility that I need that lets me adapt whenever things come up, because things come up. You start out with what you thought was, what you were going to do for a particular week. I thought I was going to do all different kinds of things this week. I had entirely different plans, and then those changed just overnight. And as a result, well, you've got to have the ability to be flexible. That's all I'm saying. One of the things I wanted to do this week, but apparently I'm not going to be able to do, is a video on starting sage plants from layers. I could shoot the video, but I'd have to hold on to the part that I've already shot, and it's going to be probably 10, 15 gigabytes of data, and I don't really feel like holding on to 10 to 15 gigabytes of data for a couple of weeks until the process produces roots, so I can go and finish the rest of the video and then put the two halves together. And I know I'm drinking an invisible drink here. So what I've done, all right, so before we go, do it. So what I have done is I've got two separate sage bushes, and one of them I started about 2 or 3 weeks, maybe 3-4 weeks ago, but they were in the middle of flowering. So this is an important thing to know. They were in the middle of flowering. And I should have thought about this at the time, right? Whenever you've got a plant that's in the middle of trying to reproduce with sexual reproduction, with flowers, it's not the greatest time in the world to try to get it to try a different form of propagation by creating the necessary hormones to create roots. That's a different life activity. Right now, it wants to be making flowers and making seeds. So as soon as it's done with making flowers and making seeds, that's probably when we're going to see the roots. So I just have to be a little bit more patient. But I've got a window after that flowering phase is over that I can do this with the second sage plant. So I've got the first sage plant. I've already taken those stems, bent them over, dug out a little bit, buried a portion of the stem, covered it with a rock, and make sure that it gets moistened on a regular basis. Eventually, yes, they're going to create roots, and I'm going to be able to separate the new sage plant away from the old sage plant. You can start sage plants with cuttings in water. It's not very common that it works, but you can. A lot of the time, we'll have adventitious, just spontaneously appearing sage that roots itself. The plant will get heavy. It'll come out of the center of that ground, and whenever it comes down close to the ground, if it gets laid down, then it'll layer and it'll produce another one. So the spreading sage bush. So this is Gatorade with a little bit of vitamin C crystals added. You have a clone king. I like to clone. Even got grape scions to root. I'll have to investigate the clone king and see what it is. Maybe it's something that we can explore and share. Anyway, yes, you can do sage, culinary sage, regular sage from Laring. I don't know where I'm going to put my coffee cup, but it is empty now. Alrighty, so here in, I don't know, maybe another 2 or 3 weeks, I'll have the first plant will have roots, and the second one, since it will no longer be in flower, it'll be appropriate for me to clear out the area around it and get those stems that are ready to be laid over and layered, so I can show the entire process in one video instead of 2 separate videos, and not have 15 gigabytes of hard drive space eaten up by something waiting for the rest of the process. Anyway, woohoo. Going wild with sweet potatoes this year. The wife buried the plants that got in rocky clay soil. Oh, I managed to save if you grew them all winter. Now we got them in pots. Yeah, root crops and clay soil usually don't go incredibly well together. But whenever you got the nice soft sandy stuff, it's just fine. And I've got I think about 20 different sweet potato plants going so far in various places. One of the experiments we're doing this year, of course, is finding out if I leave sweet potatoes where the ducks can reach them. Once the ducks are allowed to go into the corn enclosure, I've got, pardon me, I've got sweet potatoes, about I think 4 or 5 sweet potatoes, no, 3 or 4 sweet potatoes in between the corn in each of the 3 blocks of corn. So it's like 12 plants there, and then the back half that I did the soil, this area of the garden is dead, let's fix it thing. I put another 3 back there, so there's 15 back in the area that eventually the ducks are going to be patrolling after it's grown up enough that they won't just completely destroy everything. I'm going to find out if the ducks are going to eat sweet potatoes. If they eat the sweet potato leaves, they most likely will not eat the vines. They haven't eaten any vines so far, but they'll eat leaves definitely off of things like peas or beans and stuff like that. Let's see, morning glories. They'll eat the leaves off of those too. Although generally I want to get those pulled out before they go to seed because I don't really have much use for morning glories. So the experiment is: will they eat the sweet potatoes? Will they eat sweet potatoes, and also will they eat squash? We're growing some Seminole pumpkin back there, and I think I've got a little bit of Ponca butternut squash in like 2 places that we're going to grow out. And once again, we'll find out if the ducks will eat the squash leaves or if they will leave those alone. And so far, there are a few things that they are not eating. There's a wild oat that grows out here. They won't touch it. They don't touch it a bit. I mean, not one bit. They might possibly eat the seeds whenever the seeds become mature, but I'm not going to make any guarantees that they will or won't. I'm just looking at what they're doing, and they're ignoring that oat grass and going around it. They aren't eating ragweed. They aren't eating poison ivy, unfortunately. Darn it. If there was one thing that was like, ducks eat poison ivy, it's great. But no, they don't. They ignore the poison ivy. They ignore the ragweed. They don't eat violets. I've had them grazing an area where we have violets growing, and they don't touch the violets at all, which is yay, more for us, because violets are a great salad component for early springtime for us humans. And if the ducks don't want to eat them, that's great. That means they're going to be eating the slugs and the snails and the isopods and the other things that might munch on our violets. So good. I need to experiment and find out if the ducks will eat strawberries. Strawberry leaves are edible. Actually, strawberries are actually fairly good for you. But I don't know if ducks would eat them. I don't know if the ducks are going to eat strawberries either. So that's a further experiment that we'll have sometime in the near future. Let's see. They don't seem to eat carrots. I don't know why they don't eat carrots, but they don't. I don't know if this is going to extend to other umbelliferous plants. For example, they probably wouldn't eat hemlock. They may or may not eat lovage. I don't know. We'll find out, because I do have places where we're growing lovage right now, and if the ducks get into them and eat the plants, then well, I guess we'll know about that. So, hey, that's pretty cool. I managed to get all the way through my list. So, what do you think is the greatest advantage to growing perennials, guys? Is it the flexibility that it gives you? Is it the efficiency that it makes of all your available resources and inputs? Is it the fact that it's regenerative, that it builds soil as you go along instead of strips away the organic matter? Is it the fact that it saves space, that you can grow actually more calories and more food in less space with perennial gardening? Or could it be the fact that once you've planted perennial plants, those perennial plants last for an extended period of time, multiple seasons or even generations, so that your efforts can be compounded over time instead of having this one amount of work that you do to produce an annual garden, poof, that's the extent of your efforts. And then you have to do the same amount of work or even more the next year, and more and more and more. Whenever you begin incorporating perennials into your overall garden plan, you accomplish more gardening with less effort over time. And that is just about the show. Hey, cool. We're almost up at an hour. Let's see. Tactical Llama has some reports here. Just learned that ducks love peppers, collards, and lettuce recently. Yeah, the soft, tender stuff they like to eat. I didn't know if they would eat peppers or not, but I guess that answers that question. If they eat peppers, will they eat other solanaceans like tomatoes and potatoes? I'll bet they probably will, or at least they probably will eat them if they're young and tender and they don't have other tasty alternatives to munch on. Kim is saying perennials get large over time. That's right, they do. Okay, so right now I've got lovage plants that I just put in the ground. I put them in just a few weeks ago, maybe a month ago, just as we're entering spring, just as we're getting up to the last frost days. I put those plants in the ground, and they were just barely started. And now I've got a couple that are maybe about 4, 5, 6 inches tall. A couple of them that are still pretty tiny. But depending upon the spot that they're in, and I didn't really know which spot they were going to be favored in and which spot they weren't going to be favored in, because if we have so many different soil conditions scattered around the property, from sandy loam to heavy clay, shady spots and sunny spots, we have all of it. And so depending upon where you are, sometimes they're going to do good, sometimes they're going to do badly. I took 6 and just spread them all around. And I have about half of them are doing fairly well at the moment. I think there's only one that's doing poorly. So yay! If I even get one that's going to make it through the year and be successful, that's propagation material, and I can just keep on propagating off of that one plant until I have as much as I need. But the lovage plant is going to get to be 6 foot tall, 6 foot wide, at least, a huge bush that produces these greens that give you the flavor of celery, which is really the reason why I want celery. I don't want it for the stringiness of it. I don't want it for the cellulose and the water. I want it for that flavor that it imparts. So having a perennial herb that I can grow and go, I'm going to need a couple of leaves off of this bush here, throw it into my soup, and now I have that celery flavoring that I was wanting. Shoot, that's a no-brainer. I'll take all of that I can get. Not sure. Kim is saying, not sure why it took me so many years to plant a perennial herb garden. Well, it started now. Yeah, it's one of those things that you have to actually take the time to get it started. But once you do, and you don't have to jump in and do it all at once either. You can pick just a couple of things every year. Every year, say, okay, I want to have a garden. And every year, whenever I'm adding my garden, I pick 1 or 2 perennial plants. Maybe it's a tree, maybe it's a shrub, maybe it's going to be a few vines. Maybe it's going to be some of these herbaceous perennials that we can put in: asparagus, strawberries for ground cover, violets. But every year, pick a few, and then slowly add that in. And as David suggested earlier, go out to those marginal areas that you're not doing much with. Start there. These are places that you're neglecting already. Fine, keep on neglecting them. Keep on neglecting them. Go to the spots that you were never going to do anything with, that you don't want to go and till up and devote more effort to gardening in every year. But you probably don't want to have to worry about mowing them either. Well, pick those spots and use those to put your perennials in. You can put in a perennial hedgerow over a period of time. This is going to provide a place for your natural wildlife, things like the birds that are going to come along to eat your insects, places for the predatory insects to take shelter in. And I was thinking of praying mantises and having a hard time summoning the word praying mantis to mind. Like, here's this bug and it's sitting here and it's going to go and eat everything. What's that called? Oh yeah, praying mantis. Okay. Guys, I'm getting tired. I need to change out my dressing and apply. Unfortunately, this is not a commercial, guys. It's not a commercial. Trust me, it's not. The stuff that I had to order this because we just didn't have enough healthy plantain. We are only really starting to propagate it just now. And I think we now have a dozen plants that we're trying to nurse along to the point where they go to seed and make more, and then we'll have plenty. But since we didn't have much, I said, well, why don't I go ahead and jump ahead and get a salve that was made with plantain. And this stuff is a traditional Amish recipe. I'll read off to you what is in it. And this is pretty much what I would make myself if I was going to be formulating this. All right, so this stuff has olive oil, not bad, not bad. Beeswax, not bad. Chickweed. Okay, I wouldn't necessarily have thought to put chickweed in it, but okay, that's nice, cooling and anti-inflammatory, I believe. Then we have comfrey. Uh-oh, got so herb comfrey. Plantain, which of course is one that if I've got plantain, I'm not going to worry about not having comfrey. Oil of camphor, wintergreen oil, eucalyptus oil, pine oil, and lavender oil. So all of those essential oils are in there. Okay, so generally speaking, if I was going to be trying to formulate something to combat infection with herbs, there are 4 main herbs that I'm looking at that I would want to have, and I would want to have at least 2 out of the 4 in whatever that formulation was. And those 4 herbs are anything that contains thymol. So we have thyme, oregano, and bee balm, Menardas. The one that we're trying to grow here, which unfortunately I was a little bit late to get a live plant, but I got some seeds and we're going to see if they turn out. The one we're trying to get started above and beyond the regular common fistulosa Menarda that everybody's familiar with, the regular like pink and purple bee balm. This one is called horse mint or spotted bee balm, and it has more thymol than just about anything. So as far as a medicinal herb goes, we want a lot of that. So we've got that going. And then I've got regular mint for menthol. So your peppermint, spearmint, water mint contains menthol. Horse mint is not a true mint. It's actually a bee balm, and it has thymol in it. Those 2 particular antiseptics are excellent. They'll kill most infections. But of course, eucalyptol from sweet gum or eucalyptus trees is another great topical antiseptic. And methyl salicylate from wintergreen would be another good one if you have access to it. It's also great for relieving muscle strain and tension and stuff like that as another application for that particular antiseptic herb. But right now, Faith Case feeling ambivalent about comfrey today. Tarn that comfrey with your big root ball. Why do you have to take up so much space? Right? In any case, try to have at least 2 going. I have at one time attempted to have wintergreen growing, and I may try again to get wintergreen started up here just once I've got more consistent shade, more consistent coolness from surface water helping out during the summer, because it can get kind of hot and kind of dry here. And if it's an area that is going to be exposed to sun at all, I don't think wintergreen's going to manage to make it there. So once we have an area that's consistently in the shade and is consistently hydrated and cooled by surface water, I think I'll be able to get away with growing wintergreen again. But I'm just going to put a peg in that, and we'll get back to it later. As far as eucalyptus goes, I tried a sweet gum tree once. We may try it again, but I've got other things that I can be planting, and I already do have 2 effective antiseptic herbs. So anyway, 2 antiseptic herbs. Yeah, you can get comfrey if you want comfrey, but definitely try to get plantain because of its ability to draw infections in foreign bodies out of wounds. It's very, very useful, and also useful for anti-inflammatory internally, especially GI tract stuff. So if you have problems with the tum-tum, drinking a tea of the plantain leaves is helpful for that. Just keep in mind, it's very bitter. You might want to add a pinch of salt or something to mitigate the bitterness of it. But it is good internal medicine as well. Not that I can tell you that. We're just speaking anecdotally, of course, right? Because, not a doctor. So there we go. I'm getting ready to change my dressing. We're going to try a little bit of this stuff on and see if it works as well as the poultice that I would be making by myself with my mortar and pestle and the herbs that we have growing around the place. I gotta say, if I had to come up with all of the materials that I've been using to treat my injury over the course of the week with just stuff that we've got growing around the place, I would come up a little bit short. I've got loofah growing that you could use for sponges, for dressings and stuff like that. If you need to have a regular source of material to use to change a dressing with, where are you going to get that? Does anybody happen to have the ability to make cloth and bandages on short notice? I can grow loofah. The sponge material, I can cut that into slices. I can put that into boiling water to sanitize it, sterilize it, and use that for things that I might need gauze or tissue for. So, but I don't have any of those. I'm just growing them right now. I don't have any of them in reserve, is what I'm trying to say. So if we needed it, it's the end of the season. I should have them by spring, right? That's not a whole lot of comfort to somebody that has an injury that needs to be treated today. Our yarrow that we're growing, and we are propagating and spreading a lot more yarrow around, and eventually I will have yarrow for sale on the website. We will sell yarrow. It's doing great. It's got little flowers coming out now, little white flowers. The insects are being attracted to it, and it's doing great in various spots around the yard where it's growing. But currently, the leaves are all green, and in order to make the styptic powder out of that, I would need to take the leaves and strip them off of the stems, dry those out, and then crumble those to powder. We don't have any prepared at the moment, is all I'm trying to say. We'll have some prepared sometime around fall, but once again, this is a resource that potentially we will have, but I don't have now. We have it in the supply chain, but it's not completed. So we're making use of these already prepared remedies that we have: the drawing salve, the rolls of gauze, medical tape, stuff of that nature. Oh, now as far as vitamin C goes, I think I mentioned that we're making some progress with flowering quince, and I think flowering quince, the fruit of the flowering quince, if we harvest that and dry it and powder it, that would make a pretty good vitamin C supplement to be used in particularly in wintertime whenever you're trying to fight off infections, or really any time really that you're trying to fight off infections, and you need to add additional vitamin C to your diet. Having a concentrated source like this would be helpful. Flowering quince, of course, is the Japanese flowering quince. It's a member of the Rosaceae family, and it makes little tiny fruits. I mean, little tiny fruits, maybe about 2 or 3 centimeters across, which are incredibly rich and dense in vitamin C. So, similar to Rosa rugosa or rose hips, but this one is a little bit more colorful. Mm. And being a shade loving shrub, it's something that you can tuck into places where you don't necessarily have anything else in that spot. Well, you can put one of these flowering quinces in that shady spot, and it'll do just fine there and produce this fruit for you that produces vitamin C. And yay. In any case, guys, this next week, I'm going to be getting out there with the camera and showing some stuff to you. We'll show you the pocket ponds. I'll give you a brief overview of the things that are currently producing fruit right now. Of course, you got to see a strawberry today. Of course, more strawberries are coming. The thumbnail picture that I took showed our gumi bush. We will try to start growing some of this particular fruit and have those ready, have the trees ready here in another year or so, I imagine. This particular one in the front yard is doing pretty good. Those little berries that are on there, they're about the size of the tip of my pinky, and they will be fully ripe and ready to eat probably around the end of July or mid-July or so. But those are pretty good. Right now, they're super tart, so you don't want to eat them right now. They're red, but they're not quite red, ripe, ready to eat. And then we've got goji berries coming on and other stuff too. But we'll bring the camera around. I'll show you all the new stuff that I've been kind of doing a little bit at a time. Stuff like installing little solar pumps to run little fountains and things like that. I mean, it's not a whole lot of work, but we've got all kinds of stuff to show you. And we'll get the camera out and give you a progress report on some of these things. That's all I've got for you tonight, good people. As always, I hope you found the video informative or entertaining, and maybe a little bit of both. And I will catch you next time. Until then, get out there and get growing. I'm going to get going to bed because it's getting late. Good night, everybody. And, yep, there's always Mary is Tulsa Fox. If you want to see some behind-the-scenes stuff, sometimes I don't have the camera out, but Mary does, and she may accidentally show you previews of things. I think she already has a couple of videos where those pocket pools show up. So I'll talk about them at length sometime this week whenever we've got the camera out and around. They're a lot more presentable now than they were whenever Mary took the first footage of them with her phone. In any case, guys, thank you very much for joining me tonight. I will catch you next time. Until then, get out there and get growing. Good night.